When a Pareve product behaves like dairy, melting like cheese, whipping like cream, foaming like milk, it triggers a fascinating intersection between Halacha, modern food law, and the ethical responsibilities that communities carry. The conversation is no longer only about kashrut categories. It becomes about consumer safety, transparency, trust, and the moral duty to protect individuals with life-threatening food allergies. And in many ways, this convergence reveals Halacha at its most forward-looking, fully capable of integrating new scientific realities while reinforcing the core principle of communal responsibility. In the halakhic system, a food earns its dairy or pareve status based on its origin, not on its sensory behavior. A precision-fermented casein protein might stretch and melt exactly like mozzarella, yet halakhically it can still be pareve if it never came from a cow and was produced entirely through microbial fermentation. This creates enormous opportunity: pareve cheeseburgers, dairy-like desserts at fleishig banquets, and a smoother kosher food ecosystem. But at the same time, the more these foods resemble dairy, the more other frameworks come into play, especially allergen law. And here, Halacha's instinct toward care for human life, human dignity, and communal safety aligns strongly with regulatory norms. Food allergy obligations begin with Pikwach Nefesh, the overarching command to safeguard life. Even if a pareve product is kosher, the halakhic community still carries an ethical duty to prevent confusion for people with severe dairy allergies, or any allergy. This becomes particularly important when we consider precision-fermented dairy alternatives. Many of these proteins are molecularly identical to dairy components even if they are not sourced from animals. For someone with a milk protein allergy, a casein molecule triggers the same immune reaction whether it came from a cow or from a fermentation tank. The halakhic status might be pareve, but the medical risk is exactly the same. This is where halacha and allergen law converge with striking harmony. Food safety regulations require accurate allergen labeling, and halakhic principles demand it in spirit. The prohibition against deception, Geneva Diet, is not only about honesty in business, it also extends to preventing misrepresentation of food contents. When a product contains a dairy-identical protein that could harm an allergic person, presenting it simply as pareve, without clarifying its allergenic potential, creates risk. The kosher status may be clear, but the communal obligation is broader: to ensure that an uninformed guest, a child at a school event, or a visitor at a Shabbat meal does not make an assumption that could endanger their health. In practice, this means communities can adopt proactive norms that support both halacha and allergen safety. Packages of precision-fermented dairy alternatives can display two different but equally important signals: pareve for kosher classification and contains milk proteins, or not safe for milk-allergic individuals for health protection. Such labeling does not dilute the halakhic identity. It enhances communal transparency. And it prevents the false mental shortcut that pareve always means safe for dairy-allergic people, which will increasingly not be true as food technology progresses. Communal spaces, synagogues, schools, camps, catered halls, can also develop simple habits that reinforce safety. When serving dairy-like pareve dishes, hosts can make brief verbal notes or place small cards indicating both kashrut and allergen information. These gestures may seem small, but they reinforce trust. They also reflect a broader halakhic ethic: lo ta'amod al dam rieka, do not stand by while another is placed at risk. The tradition expects us to protect one another even when the danger is indirect. Clear communication is part of that duty. At the same time, communities must avoid sliding into unnecessary stringency or confusion. Declaring something treated as dairy because it looks like dairy for allergen purposes does not mean it becomes dairy halakhically. These categories can coexist without conflict. Kashrut deals with ritual and lineage. Allergen law deals with biology and immunology. They serve different purposes. And far from creating tension, these distinctions allow Jewish law to remain coherent while addressing contemporary realities responsibly. Education also plays a crucial role. Many people assume that pareve means neutral in every sense. But the coming generation of food technology products will require more nuance. Schools, camps, and communal organizations can teach families the difference between pareve for kashrut and allergen safe for medical needs. This type of education does not burden the halakhic system, it strengthens it. It builds a culture where kosher observance and health awareness reinforce each other instead of operating in parallel tracks. The most encouraging part of this entire conversation is how well Halacha's internal values align with the best practices of modern food safety. Halacha emphasizes truthfulness, care for the vulnerable, protection of life, and avoidance of harm. Allergen law emphasizes transparency, accuracy, and preventing medical risk. When a Pareve product behaves like dairy, the solution is not to retreat from innovation, but to ensure that the clarity of our communication honors both traditions. The technology provides opportunity. The community provides intention. Ultimately, the emergence of dairy-like Pareve foods shows Halacha at its finest, deeply rooted yet responsive, loyal to its categories yet adaptable to real-world needs. As precision fermentation and other technologies continue to advance, the Halakha community can lead with responsibility, maintaining kosher integrity, respecting scientific reality, and protecting every individual at the table. In this sense, the age of food tech does not challenge Halacha's values. It invites them to shine even more brightly.